SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Are you tired of dents and scratches ruining the look of your car? Look no further than Porter's Body Shop in Brookhaven. Call us at 601-833-1861 or visit us online at portersbodyshopms.com.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to MidDays SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Will East in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning, Will.
Good morning. Is a lot. Today is going to be a busy news day. I'm just going to let you know.
Man, oh man, cannot keep up with all of it. It's just a flurry.
It's really, this day and age. I know our attention spans aren't as long as what they used to be, but it seems like every 5 minutes there's a new breaking story. There's a new big something that years ago we would have spent a whole week on, but now it's just, okay, that minute's done. Let's go on to the next big story.
It's crazy. It truly is. But it's a lot of fun for us because we got a bunch to talk about. There ain't no doubt about that. On the program today, it's John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association. He'll join us at 11:05. He may have some thoughts about what's going on out there in the financial markets. So give us an update here, Will. We were just talking about this. First, the President of the United States announces over the weekend he's imposing 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico on goods produced there that are imported into this country. And now it looks like Mexico says they're going to send troops to the border. That was one of the primary objectives of imposing such tariffs, was to get Mexico to get control of its border and stop the flood of migrants as well as fentanyl across our southern border. So the president just announced that Mexico has agreed to do so, send some troops, and thus he will pause the tariffs for 1 month. See what happens.
1 month, yeah. Mexico's president announced that just a few minutes ago. In fact, we were in a meeting talking about these tariffs and everything, and she posted on X that they're going to immediately reinforce its northern border with 10,000 National Guard members to prevent drug trafficking from Mexico to the U.S. So that's Mexico's National Guard, as I understand it.
Wow.
Which is something that the Trump administration, and I think most Americans, have been pushing for, have wanted for Mexico to enforce its own border, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I don't have any issue with that. It's ridiculous that Mexico has dropped the financial ball, shall we say. They don't care. And honestly, it feels like there's a lot of corruption that exists as well. These cartels, they're paying off a bunch of people in Mexico to have free reign of the country and the border. And they're enriching themselves at our expense. So I would have to say, in this particular case, President Trump's actions using the economic might of America has resulted in what appears to be, right now at least, a positive outcome. And the reason I hesitate is because even the president says, okay, we're going to watch you for 30 days and see what happens. The U.S.-Canada tariff showdown, I think is a bit more perplexing.
Yeah, because there's not there's not a lot of cartels in Canada, I don't think, pushing stuff up the border or down the border like what's going on with Mexico. It seems to be that that Trump has an axe to grind with Canada, and he's going to grind it.
I think a couple of things there, honestly. The first is he wants Canada to become a state. In fact, he said that today. All you got to do is agree to become a state. We'll call the tariffs off. Just nothing to it, right?
I think so often Trump tries to push for more than what he knows he can get.
Well, sure. It's
negotiating what 101.
Absolutely.
How to make the art of the deal. Isn't that what he called it?
Always start with your goal, your top goal, your highest situation and outcome, and then negotiate down from there. Yeah, that's certainly common.
And it does not always work.
No,
There's
it doesn't.
been many instances where he's done this, and it has failed miserably.
That's absolutely true.
But there's time.
We'll see.
Let's talk about Panama. Panama's another one that this is one of those big stories that he gets lost in the ether almost. But Panama, for the whole time on the campaign trail, Trump has been pounding, the fact that we got to take back the Panama Canal. We built it. By God, we should take it back.
Yeah.
And people are, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's, that's a sovereign country. How dare you do that and all that kind of stuff. And the reason why he was doing all that was because China's been shipping stuff through Panama at a highly reduced cost, as I understand it, or little to nothing, basically. And basically, now Trump has gotten the Panamanian president to tear up that agreement with China.
Yep.
So that we have better access to trade routes.
Yeah.
That's the whole Greenland thing. It's all about trade routes and all that kind of stuff. So, again, he kind of goes overboard on this, and everybody throws their arms. I can't believe he's doing that, but he gets a concession out of it.
Yeah. And so you'd have to chalk that up a little bit as a win, honestly, because we got what we wanted. The president got what he wanted. He got Mexico to come to the table, negotiate, and he said it's real easy just to get control of the border here, and we'll call these tariffs off. So they have agreed to do that, at least in principle.
Yeah. As
of today, has the Mexican president. And we'll see where all that lands. That's really all we can say.
The Canada one is, I understand he said he wants Canada to be a state and all that kind of stuff. Again, I think that's a little bit of bluster just to get the headlines. But I wonder what will happen there. They're going to talk today at 3 p.m., him and Trudeau, who's still the prime minister of Canada for at least a little while, I guess until they have an election. And then that Pierre guy will take over, who's conservative.
Yeah.
But they're going to talk today, and I would expect there will be some news out of that.
Yeah. That one's a little bit more of a head-scratcher, no doubt. At least what he's saying right now is we want Canada to become a state. And, in fact, he said that. He stated that. If they would agree to do so, we'll call the whole deal off. It's the concern I have is how it might affect our farmers and American companies who export goods and rely on Canada. Cattle farmers, for example, are a big group that relies on other nations to buy their goods. And imposing tariffs, because they've retaliated with tariffs, it could have a negative effect on their business. Then they're already struggling. You remember the lieutenant governor was in a couple of weeks ago talking about the plight of Mississippi's farmers, not just cattle farmers, but across the board. Honestly, it's a big problem. So we'll see how all that plays out for sure. But right now, the big news is the Mexican president said, okay, we'll back off.
Yeah.
And Mr. Trump said, okay, we'll pause the tariffs for 30 days and check you out. Make sure you comply.
I wanted to read you something that I found. President Trump said that he would use tariffs as a negotiating tool if he wins the White House. This is from a little bit ago.
Okay.
And wait a minute, that's not President Trump that said that. That was Bernie Sanders in 2019.
Oh.
It's from CNN. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders said he would use tariffs as a negotiating tool if he wins the White House, but slammed President Trump's latest maneuvering.
Geez,
this was from 2019. He was in an interview with on CNN where he basically said tariffs are a great negotiating tool.
Of course he would say that. Oh, gosh. Well, hey, Sanders, who cares? I mean, he's
I'm going to play you in a little bit, Gerard. I don't know if you were paying attention this weekend, but the Democrats elected a new leader, basically, of the party, and there were some interesting things that came out of that whole meeting.
interesting.
And we'll even play the prayer that they used to close it out.
Okay.
I think you might get a little chuckle out of this one. This was
I love it.
I had to look up a few words and a few phrases, so I was quite confused.
We will look forward to that. We got Will East in for a Rhino today. We're in the Element Well studio. We're coming right back. Stay with us. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
May the endless, boundless energy of the universe wrap around you with awe and love and well-becoming. Amen, Ashe, Amin, and may we together make it so.
What in the wide world of sports was that?
They were praying at the Democratic National Committee meetings.
Unbelievable.
Ashoo. Achoo. Ashoo. I think somebody sneezed. Ashoo. Let's shoo the old one out of the door and bring in the new chair of the Democratic National Committee. That whole meeting, man, that was just, I was, Twitter is so great when there's live events going on. And there was this guy who I was following who was there, and he was tweeting all this stuff out. It was like a comedy show. I've got the clip of them going through the committee rules, who can be on the committee. And boy, it's just fun to listen to them go through all their rules and stipulations. I mean, the red tape just to be on the Democratic National Committee is it's quite fun. Do you want to give it a listen real quick?
Sure.
All right.
Or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 offices must be gender balanced. With the results of the previous 4 elections, our elected officers are currently 2 male and 2 female. In order to be gender balanced, we must elect 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender.
Okay.
So again, this is what we have to do for this vice chair race. We have to elect 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender. To ensure our process accounts for male, female, and non-binary candidates, we conferred with our RBC co-chair, our LGBT caucus co-chair, and others
Oh my
to ensure
gosh.
that the process is inclusive and meets the gender balance
So
requirements.
once again, they're completely leaning in to identity ideology. It's just nothing about what are we going to do to regain some degree of traction. and support from the American people and voters so that we can get our people voted to advance our agenda? No, nothing about that, right? Nothing about even discussing what the agenda is and what their principles are they stand for.
The branding issue that
right,
they have.
all that. Nothing but identity garbage. And that indicates to me, it's interesting because I got the Business Channel on in the studio. They're doing a story on it right now. And the headline there says, DNC mocked over gender rules. That's pretty accurate. But again, how tone deaf can they be? No message did they consume or act upon after November 5th, is what it looks like to me.
I mean, if you don't learn from your mistakes, I don't know. And the sad thing is, these are the folks that were in charge for the last 4 years. Okay?
And taking no stock of what occurred. Not acting or being guided or adjusting on the basis of reality. Keep doing it, as far as I'm concerned, because I think people are sick of it. That was, again, shown at the ballot box in November, and that hasn't changed. People don't want outcomes based on these immutable characteristics. Even a large number of Democrats don't support that. But they don't seem to get it, as best I can tell.
Well, it's the extremes of the party, both sides, Republicans as well. It's the extremes of the party that win the primaries.
Yeah.
And therefore they govern.
That's absolutely true. Well, man, I don't know what to make of that, honestly, other than they just didn't hear a thing a couple of months ago. Just completely oblivious to what happened. And I would say that's a problem for them, but that's a good for, as far as I'm concerned, for us. So we'll just keep on keeping on. But the big news again, and the markets have reacted to this, paired the significant losses.
Yeah, because the futures were down, as much as
700 points, around 700 points on the Dow and around 400 or so on the NASDAQ. And concerns about the just the tumult caused by and the disruption and the uncertainty around these tariffs. But Mexico has capitulated somewhat, at least on their side. Canada, not yet that I know of, but we have seen reports that President Trump, Prime Minister Trudeau, scheduled to have a discussion about this later on today. Will be after the program. We'll see what the outcome is. By the way, the order was signed over the weekend, I believe, tonight.
Yeah.
12:01 a.m. Tuesday is when the tariffs would go officially into effect. Now, something we need to pass on that I think Will is largely misunderstood about tariffs is that it's not foreign countries who pay tariffs. It's not even the foreign companies who make the goods that they ship into this country. It's American importers. American companies are who collect tariffs and must file reports and remit to the Revenue Service in this country. They then, of course, can decide whether or not they want to pass those on to consumers. So it's American companies that are actually paying the tariffs.
Yeah. So if let's say you drink Mexican beer, like you like a Corona. Well, that Corona, if you look on the back of that bottle, is imported by an American company.
That's right.
Right? That's the American company. Am I correct?
That's right.
That will pay that 25%
that is correct.
tariff.
That is correct. Now, of course, what they're going to do is say, hey, Corona, over here in this country, we have a tariff on this beer we buy from you. We need you to cut the price because in order for us to be able to buy your product, make that viable, and sell it in the market, we need you to help absorb, if not completely, these tariffs. And then they may say, okay, we're not going to do it. I mean, that's the kind of negotiations that are occurring where the American companies that import, such as Corona, they may decide to include those in the price out to the retailers in the distribution of that beer, or they may absorb it, or they may do a partial absorption, a partial pass on. I mean, it's just part of the negotiations among the parties once these tariffs are implemented. I just wanted folks to know that we don't actually collect money from the beer maker, to your example, in Mexico. We don't collect money from the Mexican government. The money's collected from the American importer.
Yeah.
I am concerned about the impact on farmers, mainly the Canada tariffs, because they've retaliated, as you know. Right now, that's the announcement. Who knows?
So the importers in Canada now have to pay, or would have to pay, a larger
that's right
fee to import from America
to Canada.
Yeah,
to the Canadian government, based on the import of American goods.
And it gets so complicated. It's not on everything.
Right. It's limited.
There's certain things, right?
And it's like $150 billion worth of goods we import. This particular order would apply to from Canada. I mean, that's not a lot of money when you think about a $25 trillion GDP economy, right? But you would see it hit in certain goods. Now, the president said, look, this may be short-term pain, but it'll be worth it in the long run. It does beg the question. Does the average person, do they appreciate that? Are they okay with that? I don't know. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Are you okay with the idea that you may see higher grocery prices, higher fuel prices? I don't know how long it could last. And then there's always the question, Will, once these sellers of these goods, once they raise their prices to accommodate the tariffs, even when the tariffs are eliminated and rescinded, are they going to pull the prices back? That's always a question. But I don't know if most people are okay with this sort of short-term pain for long-term gain scenario that the president is promoting. I think we can say with a high degree of confidence that most people wanted to elect Donald Trump as our president to trim the cost of living. They wanted to see that their cost of just everyday operation of their household is brought in line with their income, and this isn't going to do it in the short term. That's for sure. Long term, we could see some benefit. The benefit as in we may see more Canadian and Mexican companies move into this country to set up operations. Thus, there would be no tariffs, jobs would be created, taxes would be paid, etc. Yeah, those are all long-term benefits. If that should come to fruition as a result of these tariffs, I'm just not sure if people are okay with this. You know, the big problem, most people don't even know. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the the Great Depression, passed the a tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which raised or raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
Think of the tender things that we were working on.
Oh, boy.
I think most people's knowledge of tariffs comes from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I think the first time I ever heard the word tariff, and I think when the word tariff is brought up, this is the first thing I think about, Gerard.
Yeah, I can understand that for sure. It's not surprising, and it's not something we talk about a lot. It's really, if you think about it, the idea and even the discussion of tariffs has been pretty muted until President Trump was elected his first go-round back in 2016. And, what does he say? That tariffs are the most beautiful word in the dictionary. Said, big, beautiful tariffs. So, but I certainly get it. Using, again, this country's economic might, we are the biggest customer in the world. Then, the other thing that aggravates me, I know it does him, is we protect the whole dang world. It's all of our now $900 billion a year of spending on defense that keeps the planet in one piece. Mm-hmm. And we shouldn't bear the entire expense for that. And you remember him scolding and admonishing the EU back in his first term about that. You guys got to pay your fair share. But in this case, it's legitimate. They are receiving our protection, our cover, and not really spending enough to do their part, to share in the expense of that. Canada, too, to a great extent. Canada's protected, so is Mexico, by virtue of the fact that they border our country, and they know we're not going to let anything happen because it would put us at risk. But we're the ones with the military that have invested significantly in assets to protect this hemisphere and really the whole world, I think is the way you have to look at it. So I applaud him for that. And the thing that you think about is, well, you don't spend enough money on defense because you're spending it on all these stupid social programs. If you look at all the money that goes into the treasuries in the European nations and where it goes out, it's socialized medicine. It's all these crazy benefits. What is it, France? The whole country takes off the month of August or something insane like that.
It's crazy.
And so you got all these little perks, which I guess are nice, but you need to be worried about protecting your country.
Yeah. This USA aid thing, have you been paying attention to that?
I have, and it's sickening, but it's not surprising. Tell the folks about that.
So essentially what they do is they provide funds to other countries, right?
Right.
For different programs and any number of things. Well, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but it's almost like the principle. They spent $50,000 on, this is U.S. tax dollars, $50,000, not a lot of money, but $50,000 to produce a comic book to promote LGBTQ awareness in France.
It's, yeah.
50, I mean, just kind of the thought of that is like, wait, I know it's a small amount of money and maybe, it's not worth wasting your time over, but it's that. It's Biden the USA aid spent, I think, $2 million basically doing weapons training in Palestine, in Gaza to Palestinian soldiers.
Right.
A couple of years ago. It's a number of these type of things. They did a drag show in Ecuador that cost a couple $100,000.
Right. Yeah, I talked about that one on the show when it came up. Rand Paul does a really good job of fleshing all that stuff out, and he did in his annual Festivus speech. When he talks about all that, it's pretty good. It's entertaining as well. But this is nothing new. I think we just finally have some focus on it. What I mean by nothing new, we've known about a lot of this ridiculous, insane spending, and it's spending on stuff that I don't think the average person is even aware that their tax money is going to those various sources.
I mean, it's crazy. They spent I can't remember how many millions on abortion in a couple of countries in Africa. It was like, why are we? What's the point of this?
Well, the other thing we've learned that you probably saw is that even things that at least appear to be noble, and that's even called into question, where we're providing aid. I mean, if you think money, for example, is going to, starving Ethiopians, as an example.
Yeah.
And then you dig into it and realize, no, what it's going to is expensive dinners for the NGOs that receive these grants, it's not really going to its intended purpose. And that aggravates people.
These NGOs, non-governmental, what is it, offices? I don't even know. Organizations.
Yep.
It's money laundering. Let's just go ahead and call it what it is.
Completely is money laundering. So that's a problem. And so all Elon Musk is doing, by the way, he recommended shutting the thing down, USAID, and he called the president. President said, go for it. Now, I'll be honest, I get a little nervous when one person has that sort of power. And as long as that's done within the restrictions and the constraints of our law and Constitution, I'm fine with it. I think it's dumb. I don't think we need such an organization. There's also been some mention, even from Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State. He's talked about folding that organization into the Secretary of State's office for more oversight. I think that makes perfect sense. But when, they had to escort some of the administrators, some of the higher-ranking staff there at the USAID, because they wouldn't give Elon Musk and his team access to some of that information because they knew they was going to find out, as you say, the money laundering going on, and they didn't want that exposed. It's terrible to think that we have that many people, so many organizations who are just living off the taxpayers' dole. And it's not even the taxpayers. We don't have any money. We just borrow the money.
Yeah.
That's how we get $2 trillion deficits. But we pay for it indirectly through inflation because it's that borrowing, it's those deficits that inflate our currency and make your dollar go in a shorter distance there. So that's the problem, and so I'm glad all that's being exposed. People shouldn't be surprised. He told us this. He told us this on the campaign trail. And Elon Musk is a private sector person who doesn't waste time. He just digs into it, and he's a disruptor. His entire all of his business enterprises are disrupting in nature. He's a disruptor. He's a change agent. I don't always agree with him, but I do like the idea that you have a wealthy private sector party who doesn't need anything or care about anything. Now, I know folks out there say, well, he does get government contracts. Sure, that's true, but if you cut all those out, he's still a multi-gazillion billionaire. And I don't know. Could there be a conflict of interest? Possibly, in that respect. But man, are there not conflicts of interest with the people we hire to do those jobs and the people we send to Congress that are supposed to be providing oversight? Of course there are.
Yeah.
In fact, it's probably more widespread, I submit. But so I think this is a good thing that all this kind of crazy USAID stuff is being exposed, which is just nothing but a series of scams and shakedowns and, as you put it, money laundering. That's a problem, and I'm glad to see somebody paying attention to it, and that's what he was hired to do. The Doge boys hired to do was to dig into all this. And, something we've talked about on this program, Will, for a couple of years now is reports of improper payments. That's the way the General Accounting Office terms it, improper payments. It just simply means it's money that the federal government paid out to individuals or organizations that shouldn't have been for a variety of reasons. And they estimate that to be about $250 billion a year. That means it's probably more like $500 billion a year. And by the way, that's in the entitlement mandatory program, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Improper payments are entrenched in those programs as well. And so Musk is doing some investigating. You've probably seen this. What he's found is that the bureaucrats that make these decisions never turn any of these requests down. Some say, I've been here 20 years and I've never turned a request down. That's how we got $36 trillion in debt. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Maloney. You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you. The C Spire text line 601-879-4395. We are in the Element Wealth studio. I know the folks at Element Wealth are watching these markets very carefully today, Will. So the Dow is now only down 39 points, having been down. Prior to the open, it was down, I think, 689 is where I saw it touch. And this is the result of the Mexican president saying, okay, we'll do a little bit better on the border there. And President Trump says, okay, we'll pause the tariffs for 30 days. Remains to be seen what happens with the 25% tariffs imposed on Canadian imports, because the president is scheduled to visit with the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. When is he out of there? I thought he said, I'm out of here. Well,
I think he did, but I think they have to have an election. I'm not quite sure how Canadian parliamentary politics works, but I think they have to. They don't have a set election date like we do.
I got you.
From like the UK.
Yeah.
They call an election, and I guess they have some dates that they have.
Yeah.
That they'll set, and they'll have an election, and if the Conservatives win, which is what is expected, that Pierre, I can't pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
Guy who's pretty awesome, by the way.
Yeah,
he's
he is pretty
funny.
cool.
He may get the top spot.
Yeah. So we got to wait till something happens, I guess, till they get a new one in there before we can move forward. Okay. Well, I just wondered, because I thought it was like 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah, it seemed like a while ago.
Yeah. Let's see. Mexico agrees to deploy 10,000 troops to the U.S. border. That's right. Yep, on the C Spire text line. That's what we heard as well. We knew that they were going to deploy the military. The number 10,000 also is the figure we heard. Let's see. Was Hogboy elected as chair, or was that Babylon B, says Amanda from Pike County?
He was elected vice chair, I believe.
Right. Just quit buying their stuff, says Hal from Columbus. Whose stuff, Hal? So one of the things, Hal, that with respect to the imports, is that a lot of what we import and a lot of what Canada imports from us, I mean, just imports in general, they're components. They're not finished goods. So in the case of beer, I mean, that's a finished product. But there are a lot of parts, for example, materials that are used in the production of vehicles in this country, but the parts are manufactured abroad. Yes. So tariffs would apply to them, as an example. Oil. So Canada is our largest source of imported oil comes from Canada. And these tariffs would apply to them as well. So it wouldn't shock to see the price of gas trickle upward here pretty soon as a result. Price of oil, by the way, is hanging around that $73, $74 a barrel mark, so it's not coming down, even though we've got, it's $72.45 right now, even though we've got executive orders that should make it easier and it's more viable.
I'm looking at the list right now. It is a lot of things.
Yeah.
Plywood.
Right. Lumber.
Toilet paper.
30% of our lumber used in construction in the United States comes from Canada. So expect price of housing to go up, price of building to go up as a result.
T-shirts, tracksuits, skis.
Yeah.
It's curtains, footwear. I'm just going through the list. It's a lot of stuff. Hats, some hats.
Yep.
So, it's not everything, but it's a lot of things with Canada.
We import a lot of our live cattle from Mexico. This is according to Mike from Madison, and a lot of types of wheat.
Yeah.
For example, spring wheat and Durham wheat from Canada. Thanks, Mike. I actually wasn't aware of that. I thought I know this. We do sell a lot of our farm commodities to Canada. Mm-hmm. They're a big customer, as is China, of American farmers, and there's some concern there. There's uneasiness among America's farming community, and of course that has a big impact on the state of Mississippi because it's about 35% of the state's GDP. It seems that the reason they stem the flow of fentanyl and the tariffs will go away. It seems the reason that they stem the flow. I'm not sure exactly what they're trying to say there, but that is an objective of the tariffs. Mr. Trump made that very clear. He wants Mexico to stop the flow, the transport of fentanyl into this country comes from Mexico, but as I understand it, uses Chinese ingredients. So it's Mexico and Mexican cartels that are in cahoots with the Chinese Communist Party, who'd like nothing more than to kill Americans with drugs. They're up to killing Americans no matter which method they choose, irregardless. So I think a lot of that's targeted at Mexico's relationship with China, and I think that's wise. My only concern is, from a drugs perspective, just watching the war on drugs for 70 years, which hasn't done squat, and we've spent a lot of money on that. People want to put that stuff in their body. They seem to figure out a way to get it. Well, it's time for a break. It's Fox News and SuperTalk News coming your way. And then after that break, it's John McKay, President, CEO of Mississippi Manufacturers Association.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello? You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays. We're once again live from the Element Well studio. Hour 2 of the program. It's a short show today because it's Monday. It's Ricky Matthews, Super Talk Outdoors, coming your way at 12:05. But right now it's John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association. John, always good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, I got to believe you've been a bit busy with this tsunami of activity that could affect your members and the manufacturing industry in particular, in general, with the president's announcements with respect to tariffs. What is coming from your world on that?
Yeah, no, it's obviously been busy, and you know, this is a great example of elections have consequences. This is a thing that President Trump campaigned on. And so it should come as no surprise that he's followed through. But, so I've been talking to my counterparts around the country, as well as our national association that has deep ties to the manufacturing bases of Canada and Mexico in particular. And we're just trying to assess what impacts this type of thing will have on us. And you know, one of the key statistics that I like to bring up in this conversation is about a third of all manufacturing inputs for our manufacturers in the United States come from those two countries.
Interesting.
So
a third
of all manufacturing
So let me stop it right there, because we were just talking about that on the show when we had someone, and I think this is a sort of a common statement you would hear from the public is, well, just stop buying their stuff if it gets too expensive. But I think what's not understood is it's the components in goods that are ultimately manufactured and assembled in this country, and those increase the cost of inputs, which requires generally some adjustment to the price of that the manufacturer charges to whomever the end user, the end customer is.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And then what, you know, obviously businesses don't plan weeks out, they plan years out.
Yeah.
And so you've sort of baked in the supply chain, and obviously our neighbors are great trading partners, and we've had this relationship for decades and decades. Well, when those component parts start to get out of whack and move the needle on your product cost, then you start looking for other manufacturers, maybe in a country that does not have the similar imposed tariffs. So it really skews the natural order of global trade. And obviously we see what happens when supply chains get out of whack. It really causes some shocks to everything in the system.
So the president says that we shouldn't be too concerned, that it may be some short-term pain for some long-term gain. How do your members feel about that?
Well, look, I mean, if we've looked at survey data over the last couple of years, and if you look, I mean, a lot of them are fed up with some of these countries, particularly China, that steal intellectual property, and really they do a lot of nefarious things on their side, and so. Our members generally support actions that bring those type of activities to a stop. And so I think what you see, and again, you kind of see it happening right now with Mexico already coming to the table and the president agreeing for a pause in their tariffs. We have the president issued a national emergency for, the drugs coming across the border and illegals coming across the border. And that is what allows him to do these emergency tariffs.
Yeah.
Well, they need to get a handle on that. And I think Mexico's come to the table and said, okay, we hear you, and we're going to try to address it, and maybe we can negotiate some other recourse than blanket tariffs.
Yeah, and that's the goal. I mean, Mr. Trump's a master negotiator, art of the deal, the whole deal, and his background, and of course, negotiating deals for giant sums of money for big real estate projects in New York. I mean, that's like the ultimate scenario for negotiating, no doubt.
Yep.
And so he's really good at that. It's hard to predict how the other side will react. In this case, Mexico capitulated, and less than 24 hours to go to the tariffs go into effect. There is a meeting scheduled, as you know, with Prime Minister Trudeau. My gut feel is later today that your members could perhaps be more hurt with the Canadian tariffs. Is that true, John? Because you just said about the 30% of the inputs.
Yeah. Well, and I went, before I came on, I wanted to make sure I had these numbers correct. So in the roughly $13 billion of exports in 2023 from Mississippi manufacturers, $2.1 billion went to Canada and $1.9 went to Mexico. Okay. So you're looking at almost $2 billion each. So, I mean, that's a third of our products that we manufacture here go to those two countries. And so you absolutely have that uncertainty. And we were talking about that earlier. Businesses really can't thrive and plan when there's a bunch of uncertainty in the mix. And so I think what we would like to see is obviously get some of these national security concerns taken care of, and then have the free flow of trade back the way it should be, because these tariffs really do distort the market in ways that most people don't really understand. I mean, you've seen already some of the currency markets where the dollar's actually getting stronger compared to these other currencies. Well, some people cheer that, but again, that's going to really make it much more expensive for other countries to buy our products. Yeah, so it perhaps benefits to some extent American consumers because their dollar goes further to buy foreign imported goods. But the inverse of that is your members, for example, who manufacture things, want to sell them in Canada, it requires more Canadian currency to buy the American product. That's right. That's right. Yeah. So that's the flip of that. I'm all for King Dollar, and I think overall it's in our best interest. Absolutely. But there's got to be some degree of balance because we do rely on foreign customers. Yep. That's just a fact. It's just facts. Yeah. Let's talk about closer to home. Yeah. Nissan. Yeah. We got a factory right up the road here in Canton, Mississippi. It's no secret. The Nissan CEO came out 2 or 3 months ago, said, we don't get something straightened out in 12 months. We're no longer a going concern, essentially, is the accounting terminology you'd see in an audit report. And I don't really know. I haven't looked at their audit. Maybe they got a going concern opinion when you got the CEO providing that sort of guidance. Yeah. But what do you hear, and how could that affect Mississippi? Well, so I think, obviously, the news of the voluntary separations that they put out to employees the other day got headlines, which it normally does, but the one thing to keep in mind there is Nissan has never laid any full-time employees off. They've never done that in the history of their plant here, and I think actually in the history of their North American operation. It's amazing. So that is an amazing statistic, and so this doesn't change that. This is them trying to right size through voluntary separations. They've put together a great package for folks that are nearing the end of their career with Nissan. And so I think as that works its way out over the next 6 to 9 months, you're going to see a correction in their footprint employee size. But really, this goes back to really market forces. Nissan, along with a lot of other autos, went all in on the EV type sector, and I think you've just seen. There's a lot of reasons, and we can get into the details if you want to, but I think you've seen a realization that market might not be as fast moving as once thought. The infrastructure around the country has to catch up to that. And so I think you've seen them push their launch date for their all EV lines further out. And this is just a reflection of that.
Yeah.
And I think the other big piece of this, and we talk about this a lot, is automation. Quite frankly, we're just not going to need as many people going forward, and the auto sector is on the cutting edge of advanced manufacturing.
No doubt about it.
And that is going to be a big part of this as it plays out.
But John, that's an issue throughout the entire manufacturing industry, as you well know. And I think we focus too much in politics about manufacturing jobs. Mm-hmm. And the latest statistics I saw that are published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I think it's now less than 10%. It may be 10 to 12%, maybe, of the total
think that might be
workforce.
The national number.
Right,
Yeah,
it's manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And I'm only pointing that out because you wouldn't have to go too far back in time to find that was probably triple that.
Yeah.
Right? We were kind of a manufacturing and an agricultural economy. And so through the years, think about agriculture. I remember studying this in econ a long time ago. Is a third of our workers were in the agriculture business in the 1930s, and we struggled to feed ourselves. Now we got a bounty of food, we export it, and it's like 3% of our total workforce is in agriculture. Well, manufacturing's been experiencing that same sort of improvement and revelation just because of automation.
That's right, 100%. The productivity level has gone through the roof,
which benefits all of us.
100%.
But
Absolutely.
it's not where you can say, hey, we need more manufacturing jobs. No, we actually don't need those jobs.
We need more
manufacturing.
That's right.
Not necessarily jobs in the country.
Will be lesser than they were 20 years ago, no doubt.
I got it.
Yeah.
John McKay, President CEO of Mississippi Manufacturing Association. It's coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
There's a black man with a black cat.
Pink houses. Little John Mellencamp bumping us into this segment on Middays. We're back with you in the Element Well studio. Our guest is John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association. John, let's turn our attention more locally. I've seen you a couple of times there down at the Capitol. It's busy as well, quite active at the Mississippi State Capitol. What are you working on down there this year?
It's the busy season. Tomorrow is a very important deadline, which is the first hurdle to get bills, general bills, out of their first committee. So that's something we keep a tight eye on. It's very typical. Obviously this session has really focused on taxes kind of coming out of the gate. And that's something that will be involved in discussions with both the House with their House Bill 1 and the Senate. I understand they're working on a plan and it should be out in the next week or two. That'll be a great opportunity to really talk to each side about the impact that those bills might have on industry. But, every year I walk into that session and one of the main focus areas is always going to be workforce development.
Sure.
We have got to continue to move that needle. We've made great strides with the Standing Up Accelerate Mississippi and the Office of Workforce Development and really focusing on those career tracks that have the best outcomes for students whether they come straight out of high school with a CTE certificate, continue their education in the community college system, which we have a fantastic community college system, or move on to the IHL system, which produces some of our great professionals.
Right.
Not only do we need to train, but we need to get them jobs that are here in Mississippi, and that's a real big focus. So we're going to continue to do that. There's several good pieces of legislation that focus on that core CTE function, and hopefully we get some stuff over the finish line.
Okay. Well, speaking of tax reform, you mentioned it. You know that's the top priority in the House.
Yep.
Speaker of the House, Jason White, has indicated that. The governor in his State of the State clearly focused, hyper-focused on that. I think, as you said, in discussions with senators, in particular Senator Josh Harkins, he of course chairs Senate Finance Committee. He said they've got something they're cooking on as well, so may kind of get something in the middle. But where does your association, your members stand on this?
Yeah, it's a great question. No, first of all, I want to commend Speaker White and his team. Chairman Lamar, they're fantastic to work with, and the plan they've come out with is a really solid plan. I've talked to them over the years. The House has had iterations of different tax reform legislation, and this is a fantastic model that they've come out with. A lot of moving parts and pieces, and our folks are still analyzing maybe direct impacts on their businesses. But I'll have to say the amount of infrastructure investment that they have in their plan is incredible, and it really is transformational. It's an opportunity for us to really invest. And I always tell people, if I could wave a magic wand, we need to invest in people and infrastructure. If we do those two things, we'll come out ahead in the state. And so this piece that really tackles infrastructure, and it's not just MDOT. Obviously, we need to get Brad White and his folks all the resources we can, but it's the focus on the other modes of transportation. We have a fantastic port network here, our airports, the rail. We've got a lot of the infrastructure in place, but we need some upgrades, some expansions to really prove that we can be a hub of trade.
So that's a good point. I think it gets overlooked when you talk about supporting either growth of existing manufacturing within the state, existing manufacturing facilities, factories, so to speak, and recruiting and attracting new manufacturing. Infrastructure is pretty high on their list.
Oh, absolutely.
Data centers, it's power.
Right.
You know that.
Yep.
They don't have a bunch of trucks coming in and out of a data center delivering things or shipping things. Manufacturers, it's quite the opposite.
Absolutely.
There's a whole bunch of trucks coming in, bringing the raw material, and a whole bunch of trucks or trains, as the case may be, rail as well, right?
Absolutely.
Delivering those finished goods to the market.
Yeah, well, it's incredible. I mean, and you look at some of the manufacturers on the Gulf Coast. I mean, they're getting some of their raw material off of barges.
Yeah, that's right. The port's there.
Yep. And it's so all of those things are really, really critical to manufacturing operation, and I think you've heard Governor Reeves talk about it. Right now, when you're looking to locate a manufacturer, it's speed to market. Well, if you don't already have a pretty robust infrastructure network in place, they're going to balk.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just not going to go there because they need things quick. If they can get that building up and the machinery in place, they're ready to crank out product. They don't need to wait on a road to be built or us to go through a phase 1 environmental to see if we can put that turning lane in.
So as you know, and I suspect this is what you're referring to, the House bill, HB 1, would in fact impose a 5% sales tax on motor fuel purchases, and those monies would be dedicated, just as is the excise tax, to the State Highway Fund, the Department of Transportation. It's estimated, depending on who you hear, estimated somewhere between $350, $400 million. However, keep in mind that they would lose the $80 million that they presently receive from the Alice G. Clark Lottery Act. So let's say a net of about $300 million to $180 million. I mean, that's a significant shot in the arm to an agency that currently operates on about 1.4 billion. Pardon. I'm thinking federal government here. Pardon me.
But Brad would like that trillion.
Love that trillion.
Over there.
I mean, is that kind of the way?
No, that's absolutely right. And I think the thing you have to focus on, both the kind of what most people think of as the roads and bridges that MDOT works on, those other modes, there's a tremendous amount of federal money that flows, from the feds to the states. And if we don't have the matching dollars here at the state level, those dollars go somewhere else. And so it's incredibly important, and that's one of the things when you hear folks at MDOT talk about this, it's that dedicated recurring revenue that's so important, so that we know every year roughly how much money might be coming in, and then we can go leverage those federal dollars, because in most cases you're talking 3, 4, 5x the federal return on that one Mississippi dollar we invest.
It's what Brad really has harped on. I mean, he's focused on that.
100%.
I say harp. He doesn't harp. He's not. He doesn't really speak that way. But he repeats it regularly. He points it out.
He explains it to the policymakers in a way that they can understand that if we don't do this in a strategic way, we're really leaving a lot of money on the table, and other states are going to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
We just can't have that.
Yeah, and as you well know, the state's excise tax on fuel has been steady since 1987. It's 18.4 cents. I'm in the process of writing an article. I think I shared that with you a minute ago. But about this tax bill, in the article, I produced a little chart that shows Mississippi and how it compares to our neighboring states across the various tax categories: income tax, grocery sales tax, non-grocery property taxes. But let's talk about excise taxes. To your point about infrastructure, we have the lowest of all the neighboring states. We have the 49th lowest in the country, 18.4 cents. Louisiana's next at 20.93, Alabama 29 cents, Arkansas 24.7, and Tennessee 27.4. I was talking to a friend I played golf with yesterday that was visiting his adult children in the Nashville area, and they said, yeah, you can immediately tell when you're up there when you're buying gas. Yeah. It's because of the taxes for the most part.
No, that's right. And I'm sure there's going to be a robust debate of whether that 5-cent sales tax versus an increase in the excise tax versus some other mechanism. Those are all good conversations to have, and I think we all want us to have a strategic and competitive view of our neighboring states, and we don't want to lose business to them. But at the same time, we have plenty of room to establish that increase in certain revenue that's coming to the transportation system. And I really look forward to that discussion. I mean, I think that's important, and my members really latch on to that as something very, very valuable in their operations.
What about elimination of the income tax? Is that something they talk about?
Well, so it's not something that's high on their list. Now, obviously, when you talk about income tax, when you're a pass-through entity like an S-Corp or an LLC versus a C-Corp, some of those discussions get a little muddled.
That's right.
And other states that don't have a personal income tax have a different way to capture business tax. So they have a gross receipts tax or a franchise tax. I hate to say franchise because we were so smart to get rid of our
dumbest tax ever.
It was the dumbest tax. It was a tax on capital investment. This would not. The franchise tax that I'm talking about in other states are a little different than that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you do want some amount of fairness across business taxation.
Sure.
So our current corporate tax rate is still pegged at that 5%. It got decoupled with our tax plan a few years ago. So that's one thing we're just going to keep an eye on and have those conversations. But overall, it's a positive development. Okay.
Well, we'll see what happens. As you said, we got a couple of weeks till the Senate releases, up to the next couple of weeks. The Senate releases their plan, and we'll see where there's overlap, where there's differences, and that's how the old sausage is made.
Yeah, the fun shall begin. That's right.
As you know, John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association, has been our guest. Thanks for coming in, John.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
We're coming right back, folks, with half an hour left of Middays on this Monday. Stay with us.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk Mississippi.
I got my mind set on you. I got my mind set on you. I got my mind set on you.
We are back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We appreciate you joining us today, kicking off a brand new week here on Middays. It's SuperTalk Mississippi. Will East filling in for Rhino off today. So on the C Spire text line, The citizens of the United States should be happy with whatever tariffs are levied as long as it helps make the United States safe, sovereign, and self-sufficient for future generations to come. And I think that's consistent with the message that President Trump is conveying about this. It's the old short-term pain for long-term gain. The challenge with that line of thinking, Will, is that other than the really smart and politically astute listeners and viewers we have on this program, the average person, when they go to the gas pump or the grocery store and they see the price going up, you think they know that's because of tariffs? No. What's a tariff?
Most people do not know what a tariff is.
Right.
Does.
And don't care.
And they don't care.
All they know is, wait, the price went up. It's that guy in the White House's fault. That's the way. Unfortunately, that's kind of commonplace in our society these days.
Most people are so disconnected from the news versus us, people that are constant, or if you're listening, people that are constantly, every bit of news, they consume it. Most people aren't.
Yeah, and that's the concern. Charles and Matheson's last month, no such thing as the deep state. This month, deep state is good and necessary. Yeah, I applaud, honestly, the president and his inner circle for rattling the cages of the deep state. So many times we've said it, our lives are more affected by these faceless bureaucrats than they are the people we elect.
Well, who was running the White House for the last 4 years?
Nobody knows. I mean, it's anybody's guess. It wasn't the guy we elected to do it. What a contrast that is with the guy we got up there now that's done more in 24 hours than the previous guy did in 4 years. But these unelected bureaucrats have not been held accountable, and they're finally being exposed, and that's a good thing. I've actually suggested we need term limits on the unelected bureaucrats, more so than we do the members of Congress. Speaking of which, what has the Congress done in the last 2 weeks?
Nothing.
Right, but look at everything that's happening at the agency level. And that's the point I'm making, is that more stuff that affects our daily lives comes out of this sprawling agency complex, again, through rules and regulations and policies promulgated by faceless bureaucrats than the people we elect. And that's wrong. We have conferred too much power to those people. They shouldn't wield that sort of influence and impact over our lives. But that's where we are.
That's right. And, some of them, here's the crazy thing, some of them don't even come to work.
Right.
They do not. They don't come to the office.
6%, I think, the findings show 6% of the federal workforce actually shows up to the office. Now, the president said, you've probably seen the news, he gave them all an opportunity to resign.
Yeah.
You saw that? He'll pay them. They can quit right now, and they'll get paid through September if they'll just quit. Now, there are about 2.8 million federal workers. This does not apply to the military or the United States Postal Service. And this is just an effort to trim the ranks.
Yeah.
Now, I'm seeing a multitude of responses from those who are just defiant, saying no way, no how, to those who say, yeah, I'm good with that. I'm out of here. But there have been lots of conflicting. It's all been done via email, by the way, and lots of conflicting emails, according to some of the reports I've seen, announcing this, providing this opportunity. One of the concerns is the government has to fund itself again here in a couple of months. So if you're signing on to something that's going to pay you through September, we have a situation where we may not get the government funded if we can't get agreement in the Congress. And the government may shut down, in which case they wouldn't receive their severance pay here.
Wow.
Landfill management, doesn't the EU protect its markets with tariffs against the U.S.? Yes, just as the U.S. protects its markets against foreign countries that ship their stuff into the United States. I mean, tariffs are a protection mechanism. The value of them, I don't know. It just depends on the situation. I think in this case, it's not so much about the money, because it's not a whole lot of money, honestly.
Yeah.
It's more about trying to induce action in the case of Mexico. It wasn't about the amount of money that the U.S. was going to collect from American companies, by the way, who pay the tariffs. That's de minimis. I mean, in a $7 trillion budget. In fact, the Trump tariffs imposed in 2017 or 2018 during the first term, mainly on China, those continued throughout the Biden administration. He didn't. He may have meant to, but he didn't repeal them. Those have generated over that 8 years about little more than $300 billion. That ain't a whole lot of money, honestly. When you think about 8 years, $300 billion. $35 billion a year? That's a couple of hours of spending. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But in a $7 trillion annual budget, we're not going to be able to balance the budget and fund the government on the backs of tariffs, is the point. So, but yeah, it's protectionism. And now a lot of the libertarians in our country completely oppose this. I'm seeing outrage in social media, even by Mississippians who would describe themselves as more free trade libertarians. They oppose tariffs. And
I think it should just be open.
Yeah,
right?
And they're not happy with this. So, again, lots of different opinions, lots of different stances across the board in this country over this action by the president to impose tariffs. He, on the other hand, he's a big fan of them, says it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary. That's what he said. What's going to happen when the Mexican cartels retaliate, says Thomas in Greenwood. I'm not even sure what kind of retaliation you would be referring to.
I don't know, but he said, was it during his inauguration speech, that he wanted to label the cartels as terrorists.
Yeah, and that is something that's being called into question. And lots of those orders, there's no surprise. You got people who oppose them that have already launched a series of lawsuits against the various orders, and those likely will end up at the Supreme Court. Many of them will. Many of them will get struck down at lower federal courts. It's just a kind of a hodgepodge as to whether or not the plaintiff will seek to appeal. It costs money to do all that and try to get the case to the Supreme Court for a final opinion. But this is expected. I personally think that I'm concerned, let's put it this way, that maybe too much power exists in the executive branch. And regardless of party, regardless of person in the White House, I'd like to see us return to a situation where our laws and these big sweeping actions are done by our Congress and our president working jointly. That's the way the country was envisioned. That's more consistent with our Constitution. One law has been passed since President Trump was inaugurated, the Laken-Riley Act. That was teed up, of course. So there's nothing that's come out of the Congress but a flurry, a tsunami of actions. It's come out of the executive branch. Now, a lot of that's reversing what the prior president did. And then my fear is, okay, suppose the White House flips, and now we're back to a Democrat president in 2028. Then they do the same thing. So we just have this ping pong going back and forth.
I mean, imagine you get, I don't know, Bernie Sanders in there.
Yeah.
What can he do?
I don't know. All I know is what you just heard John McKay talking about is needing some confidence, some clarity, some certainty and stability. You don't get that when you know we got these competing agendas and one person can implement that. So I'd like to see a little bit more check. It's not that I disagree with the agenda. I'm talking about the process.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll kind of come back to the middle on that. Let's see what else we got here on the C Spire text line. It seems the reason they stemmed the flow was that the tariffs would go away. Yeah, I think we got that. Yeah, I'm just looking through the text line. Pardon me on that. Oh, well, here's one. Tim of the Delta, will you be talking on the situation with Delbert and Shad? I mean, that is certainly something that's out there in the news and social media. Our state auditor and our lieutenant governor. We're hoping to get David Parker, the senator who filed the bill that would change the scope of power somewhat for the auditor. I will touch on that when we come back after the break. We're hoping to get him on hopefully Wednesday. We had him scheduled for Tuesday for tomorrow, but he had a conflict. The lieutenant governor has called a meeting of all the Senate leadership, so we can't make it. Hopefully he'll be on the program with us Wednesday to discuss his rationale behind this bill. It's quite controversial. Coming right back with the final segment on this Monday.
Hey, this is Will.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
And she was lying in the grass, and she could hear the highway breathing, and she could see a nearby factory. She's making sure she's not dreaming. See the lights of the neighbor's house. Now she's starting to rise. Take a minute to concentrate, and she
We are back in the Element Well studio. So we're back with you. We thank you so much for joining us today. In the final segment, this is a question from Tim in the Delta, just talking about this sort of rift out there in the public square, Will, between our state auditor and our lieutenant governor. You know, my first take on it is I wish we could get our Republican elected leaders together to work on solutions to Mississippi's problems and also to advance an agenda that will scale our economy, create wealth, job opportunities, to retain our best and brightest that our fabulous universities are producing, and to just improve the health of our citizens, which is terrible, worst in the country by all metrics and accounts, and to focus on improving the overall quality of life in our state. That's what we elect them to do, in my view. That ought to be the objective and the goal of every elected official, is what can we do to improve the quality of life in the state of Mississippi? And unfortunately, politics get in the way. And it's not surprising, because that's just how our political environment has devolved. It feels like it's always about the next election cycle. I talked to Senator Parker about this bill. I talked to him in the Capitol that he introduced, and there's some concerns I have about it. I will say this. I'm all for identifying wasteful spending. Our legislature should be laser focused on that all the time. That should not be something we just pitch over the fence to any agency on their own, including the state auditor. Though the state auditor is charged with that function to some extent. The question is how to go about fulfilling that role, that part of the auditor's charge and mission. Contracting with third-party consultants to come in and conduct such an investigation does make me wonder, why didn't we have the ability to do that without bringing in people from Boston that are expensive? And I get the role of consultants and the fact they bring to the table experience that where they have performed this in other similar environments, in this case, a state. I get that. I was one. I certainly understand that. But I find it a bit concerning that we had to pay outside people to find things that I think we already knew honestly. But we couldn't get the legislature to act on. So now we got an expensive piece of paper, and I'm not sure any legislation has been passed, introduced, or any rules and regulations at the agency level have been implemented that would in fact achieve the cost savings that are recommended and detailed in the report. That's what would benefit us. Some $335 million is what was identified. They were required, by the way, in order to be awarded the contract to find at least $250 million. That almost suggests, well, we already know there's $250 million. Well, let's just go fix it. This is kind of what Elon Musk is doing in Washington. Yeah, we already know that's going on. As of today, you're out of here. We're not paying that money anymore. We're cutting off all that crazy spending and stuff. So that I hope we can work this out. And the other thing is, I don't have a problem with limiting any agency's ability to contract with third parties under these deadgum, archaic personal services statutes where there's exemption from competitive bidding in the state that I've been crusading to repeal for 30 years. They're fleecing us at the state level, at the county level, and the municipal level. I get concerned, and we do have, by the way, a review board that reviews these procurements. It didn't this one, by the way, because there's this semantics nuance of, well, if it's an audit, we don't have to do that. And then that calls into question, well, was this an audit or a consulting engagement? It depends on how you define audit. You see where I'm going with that? That needs to be cleaned up. I don't want any agency to have, like, unchecked power to spend taxpayer money on consultants. I don't care who the agency is or what the purpose is. That's not in the taxpayer's best interest. We're out of time today, unfortunately. We're going to be back again tomorrow to continue this discussion. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.